Welcome to the first module of the official Itachi Uchiha course. Now, as you see on the screen, there's a fucking PowerPoint. I hate PowerPoints. I am not an advocate of anything that has to do with slideshows or PowerPoints because it's like it feels like school and just fuck school, you know what I mean? But, I want in this module to talk about, I believe it's 7, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The 8 main traits of Itachi Uchiha. Now, Itachi, like we talked about earlier, he is the most well-rounded anime character in history, right? He possesses so many different things on so many different levels too. But as I went through all the film, as I studied over the years, and even in the past month, I really did another deep dive into Itachi for this course. I found 8 major traits that make Itachi Uchiha the individual that he is, and that's what we're going to be going into now with these traits, right? I didn't need any video to talk about these traits because we're not going to break these traits down in this module. I just want to run through them real quick and just let you guys know what the traits are. But I didn't need any video, but I still wanted to keep it aesthetically pleasing, right? I still wanted it to be some sort of engagement, which is why I created this PowerPoint. But anyways, I hate PowerPoints, but let's just get into it. Let's just get through it real quick. So yes, the 8 main traits of Itachi Uchiha. Let's get straight into it. So trait number 1, truth. Now this is one that's very, this is very behind the curtain. Not a lot of people talk about this. Whenever you watch a video about Itachi, and not to toot my own horn, but like this is what separates me from other anime quote unquote scientists or anime watchers. Whenever you watch any other person who talks about anime, they're not really talking about these deep personality traits that these characters have. No one who ever has made a video about Itachi really talks about his truth seeking, right? Like how he's such an advocate for the truth of reality. But anyways, let's get into it. So truth is the number 1 trait that Itachi has, right? Out of the 8 traits, this is the first one. He's always seeking for truth regardless of context or situation. So no matter what thing he's dealing with, no matter what thing that's happening in his life, no matter what event is going on, he's still approaching every situation with, okay, what is the truth of this situation? Let's get to the truth. So what does this mean? Most people are living their lives, and when they go through events, they kind of take everything surface layer. They're not really deep diving into what's actually going on, right? And most people just don't even care, right? Most people, they don't really feel that they need to know the truth about things because they feel like sometimes the truth just doesn't matter. When that's 100% false, right? Whenever you get the truth, you have freedom. Itachi approached every situation from, okay, how do I know that what's going on is real? Because if I know what's actually real, then I can make conscious, transparent decisions after the fact in this situation. I can maneuver myself in a way that's going to set me up for success. Rather, if I'm just going to blindly follow any situation and just react to any situation without seeking the truth, then I'm not going to be able to make clear, conscious decisions, if that makes sense, right? So yeah, he's never looking at things surface layer at all. He's always asking deeper questions. Most people just look at everything that happens to them so surface layer and they just let it go through their lives and then they forget about it, right? When in actuality, all events hold a significance in your life. No matter how small or how big, all things hold a significance. So anyways, he's never taking things for granted, right? So this is the same thing that I just said, right? He's never looking at things surface layer. He's always looking at the deeper hidden meanings of things. And to do this, Itachi is always asking deep questions, right? Because he needs to get to the root of everything that's going on. And the only way to know what's going on is to ask questions. You have to ask questions because what questions do is it forces your brain to try to process information. Okay? That's what makes questions so powerful. If you ever want someone to process something, like for example, why do you like MK Brad? When I ask you that question, immediately your brain starts processing information. Why do I like MK Brad? And you go into your memory bank, you try to find these recollections of things. You know what I mean? To process the question that is being asked. So when you ask questions, you're processing information on a deeper level than just blindly just watching it. So you have to ask deep questions, all right? Another thing is reverse engineering reality. Itachi was always reverse engineering reality. So what does this mean? Reverse engineering is when you take something and you peel back the layers behind it to see how it was built, how it was created. So, for example, if someone's trying to reverse engineer a laptop, how is this laptop created? They go inside the mechanics of the laptop and they peel back all the different hardware and see how it was built. What functions together? Like what components came together to make this laptop? So that's what Itachi was always doing in any situation that he found himself in. He was a reverse engineering. Okay, well, this person did that, which caused this to happen. Okay, that person said this thing, which caused that to happen. He's reverse engineering everything that's happening. That allows him to get to truth. Okay, peeking behind the glass. This is just another level of reverse engineering, right? This is where you're constantly looking at all the subtle things that are happening in any situation to get to the truth of something. So whenever something's going on, instead of reacting to it, you kind of peek behind the glass and ask, well, why is this person feeling this way? Why is this situation happening in the first place? You're peeking behind the glass just means looking at the subtleties of a situation, okay? And the final thing for truth is that he does not lie to himself about his feelings or his thought process. I see this so much with everyone, right? And I used to be guilty of this, is lying to yourself about how you feel in your thought process. Most people, especially when you're in a depressed state, when you're in a negative spiral state, most people, they don't feel comfortable in that state, and you shouldn't feel comfortable in that state. That's a negative state. But what most people do is they try to cope by lying to themselves. Oh, well, maybe it'll just go away tomorrow. Or, yeah, everyone feels this way. Oh, depression is normal. No, depression isn't normal. And don't let anyone tell you it is, okay? You have to not BS your thoughts and your feelings. You always need, whenever you are feeling happy or sad, you need to know why you're feeling that way, okay? That way, whenever you are feeling that way and you want to feel that way again, you can bring that emotion back, okay? So truth, Itachi had truth. Next trait, silent charisma. There's different forms of charisma. There's different forms. There's like the extroverted type of charisma. There's the seductive type of charisma. But Itachi has a very rare type of charisma, right? A lot of people, this is the introverted style of charisma. Now, introverted, I don't mean social anxiety. I don't mean scared to express yourself. That's not being introverted. That just means being a loser. Silent charisma or introverted charisma means the following. You're silent, but you're loud. What does this mean? You're silent in the sense that you don't have to verbally speak. You don't have to use your voice. You don't have to actually say anything. But still, you're loud. Your presence is loud. Your energy is loud. Your aura is very loud. So even though Itachi was introverted, meaning he just liked to be within himself, meaning he didn't like to speak so much, he still carried a presence with him that was very extraordinary. It was his energetic bubble was expanded super big, and everyone looked at him. Everyone gravitated towards him. So that's what I mean by silent but loud. This is what it means to have silent charisma. Another thing, to do this, Itachi had to have sub-communication mastery. Okay, so what does this mean? Your sub-communications, your body language, how you carry everything that you use to communicate without using words. So your eyes, right? Your facial expressions, your body language, how you carry yourself, your walk, everything that you use to communicate without using your voice. Itachi was a master of that. His body language, once again, most people don't pick up on these things. Itachi's body language, it wasn't alpha, but it was free. And free body language is, in some contexts, in most contexts, even more powerful than alpha body language because it shows you just don't give a fuck, right? So he had sub-communication mastery. Eyes of chakra. Itachi had very, very strong eyes. Once again, MK Brad picks up on the subtlest things, and we're going to go into all these things throughout the course as we watch film. But Itachi, just look at the slide, bro. Look at his eyes. Itachi had very strong eyes. His eyes were, because eyes are the gate to the truth. They are the window to the soul. You can see how anyone is feeling through their eyes. Everyone can fake a feeling, but the one body part that you cannot fake is your eyes. No matter how good of an actor you are, if someone looks into your eyes, they look into your soul. Itachi's eyes were so pure. They were so innocent. They were so empathetic. But they were also strong. They were also battle-hardened, They were also tough. He had calluses in his eyes, as if that makes sense. So, yeah, he had eyes of chakra, and we'll definitely go deeper into that. Once again, I don't want to have to, go deep into all these right now. That would take too much time. But throughout the course, we're going to talk about all these things, all right? So another form of silent charisma he had is silent dominance. So Itachi was very, very dominant. He was very strong. He carried himself like a very dominant individual, but he did so without speaking. He didn't have to say that he was dominant. He didn't have to say that... He didn't have to say that he could beat you up. He didn't have to say that he could smash you. He didn't care about those things, right? But his body language and his energy ensued that he could if he needed to, okay? Another thing, Itachi was serene within himself. It is impossible to be charismatic at all if you're not comfortable within yourself. It's impossible, you know what I mean? Like, you have to be comfortable within yourself. You have to be comfortable within your own skin. Itachi was so free within his body, within his personality, with who he was. He just didn't care what other people thought about him. And he shouldn't have, right? That's nothing that he understood that was nothing that needed to be in his life, right? He couldn't be himself fully. He couldn't be Itachi Uchiha, the individual, right? He couldn't be his unique self if he cared what other people thought. So he was just so comfortable within his body. He was so free. And once again, everyone becomes gravitated towards that because they take inspiration from it. Another thing, this is very important. Words chosen carefully. This is a tactic that we're going to go into when we talk about, I'm going to have in so many different modules called power games, right? How to position yourself in power. One of the tactics that we're going to talk about is called words chosen carefully. That's what I call it, right? This is when because you don't use your words all the time, you're not constantly rambling, you're not constantly talking all the time. When you do speak, everyone in the room looks at what you say. Everyone in the room stops what they're doing and their attention is gravitated towards you, because when you speak, it's so rare, it's so uncommon that when you do speak, it must be very valuable. That's a very, very strong tactic that we'll talk about later in power games, all right? Another thing is COA, aka center of attention. Because Itachi was so comfortable within himself, and because he carried himself with such a silent charisma, such a dominant, powerful charisma though, people have their attentions on him, right? He drew attention. Whether he wanted to or not, whether it was conscious or subconscious, whether it was conscious or deliberate or non-deliberate, it still happened. People gravitate towards those who have charisma because you're like a light in darkness. You're like the shining bulb in darkness. People are gravitated towards you. You're like a disco ball. You're like a firefly in the land of shadows, right? As one of my mentors would say, or one of my favorite authors would say. You're a firefly in the land of shadows. That's who you are when you have charisma. Because no one has it. It's such a rare trait, okay? Now, the last thing with silent charisma is intuitive energy mastery. And we're going to talk about this when we go deep into chakra, right? We're going to talk about chakras. We're going to talk about chakra centers. And we're going to talk about how that relates into the show Naruto. And of course, use Itachi as our mascot to talk about that, okay? But Itachi had an intuitive energy mastery. He had mastery over his chakra. Very, very subtly, right? Most people, they use their chakra for jutsus. Itachi knew how to use his chakra just to carry himself. What do I mean by that? We'll talk about that later, okay? Next one, okay? So this is trait number 3. Itachi was confident, but excellent. Excellency, okay? Now, Itachi's confidence and his excellency came from the Uchiha culture, right? Now, if you're in my Discord and you have access to my official Sasuke Uchiha course, we talked about this in one of the early modules about the Uchiha culture. You know, the Uchiha clan as a collective set this environment, right? This culture of confidence and excellency, right? You couldn't be an Uchiha if you weren't excellent. They all had to live up to a certain standard, and that's what made all the Uchiha members so amazing, right? And Itachi he was one of those, right? He lived up to that Uchiha culture. He was one of the greatest, if not the greatest Uchiha of all time. Okay, and another thing, right? He was son of Fugaku. If you guys don't know, Fugaku Uchiha was the leader of the Uchiha clan. So not just head of Itachi's household, right? But the head of the entire clan, all however 100 or 1,000 many members there were. So because Itachi was the oldest son of the leader of the clan, you could be damn sure he had a huge pressure on himself, right? To perform, for excellency, to be excellent. Your father's the leader of the greatest clan in the entire world. You have to live up to that expectation. So Itachi, that's something else that a lot of people forget about Itachi, is like from birth, he was expected to perform, okay? So that's another thing. So work ethic, because he was expected to perform, Itachi's work ethic from birth was super, super duper big, because it wasn't like Itachi, you know, was living very comfortably and was very lazy. No, and then he had to learn discipline. Like, no, Fugaku from birth made sure that Itachi had discipline from the start, from the get-go, because like I said, he was going to have to follow in the footsteps of Fugaku, right? So from birth, he had to have that work ethic, that discipline, okay? So Itachi's work ethic was just as strong as anybody, Sasuke's, Naruto's, anybody, because he had to build it from birth, from the get-go, whereas most people have to build it later on in their life because they live such comfortable lives. Because he was son of Fugaku, Itachi had not just one chip on his shoulder. He had a plethora of chips on his shoulder. You got to think about it. Everyone in the clan wants to be in power. Everyone in the clan, not everyone, but a lot of people I'm sure would like to lead. You know, there's power games always happening. So because people see Itachi as son of Fugaku, they're like, okay, you better perform, bro. You better perform. If I'm an Uchiha, but I wasn't grateful enough. I wasn't lucky enough to be born the son of Fugaku. So I'm not ever going to be able to be the leader unless you die or unless, circumstances come into my favor. So if you have that luck, then you better perform. That's how I'm sure a lot of people saw Itachi and the rest of the clan, inside of the clan, right? So he had so many chips on his shoulder to outdo everybody else. And we didn't really get to see this. This is more of a personal assumption. But I'm sure that Itachi had chips on his shoulder being the son of Fugaku, okay? Now, this is very, very, very important. Itachi had a higher level of default setting. So what is default setting? Default setting is your baseline. It is who you are at default. What are most people like at their default, right? When they're not actively striving for their goals, when they're not actively pushing themselves, when they're not applying discipline, who they are at their default? Lazy, very comfortable, very, very dependent on dopamine hits. They're just not amazing relative to everyone else. They're not a step above, an echelon above everyone else at their default. Itachi was. Because from birth, he had to work so hard with discipline and focus and drive and all the things that Fugaku kind of instilled in him. Because he was born into the Uchiha culture, his default from birth, he was trained to be absolutely at an excellent level. A very, very high level. So his default setting compared to everyone else in the show was much, much higher, okay? Time spent. Because Itachi lived in excellency, that means he lived in the gym. He lived working out. He was always putting in the reps. He was always putting in the reps. He was always moving and striving towards excellency, okay? And of course, this has to be mentioned, but Itachi was a born genius. He just was, right? Of course, like we'll talk about, he put in more hours than anybody in terms of skill, hard work, and discipline, okay? He had more focus than anybody. But at the same time, he was born with a higher level of genius than a lot of other individuals, okay? But also his genius was all, but a lot of Uchiha members had genius ability from birth, but Itachi trained his genius, right? You can train your genius ability and make it on a higher echelon, okay? So trait number 4, Itachi was very, very empathetic, okay? What made Itachi so empathetic is that he was great at reading energy. He had this intuitive sense of what other people felt, what other people were going through. And because of this, he was very empathetic. He could place himself in other people's shoes, in other people's situations, and understand how they feel, if that makes sense. And because of this, he was a peacemaker. Itachi wanted to see people win. He wanted to see people go through their lives without suffering. Right? And because of this, he believed in unity. He believed in the collective. He believed in the whole. He wanted to see people unified. He wanted to see the village unified. That's what caused him to do all the things that he did, is his sense of empathy for the world. His sense of empathy for nature. He had a heart, Even though he was a savage killer, he had a heart. He understood reality, okay? So he lived for harmony. And here's another thing, right? I wrote this down as well. He understood the benefits of alliance, right? Most people in the show were like fighting other groups, right? They were trying to position themselves in power, not understanding that the most powerful thing that everyone could do is have alliance. Because if everyone's on your team, that means you win, right? And because you're serving someone else, because it's a team effort, that means both parties win. So Itachi understood the principle of alliance. He understood that if everyone came together and worked as a collective, all parties would win, okay? And so because of this paradigm, he had the collective groupthink paradigm. He was always thinking about how could both parties win? How can both sides win? How can we all collectively win? How can we all collectively get what we want? And Itachi had the mindset and the paradigm. He saw the world through the lens of a humanitarian. He was a humanitarian. It's a funny word, but he just was, right? That's who he was. All right, so next trait. Mission. And like we mentioned earlier, him being son of Fugaku, he was born into a mission, right? He was born with expectations, being the son of the leader of the Uchiha. Now, what Itachi did was, he had a mind of his own. He was an independent, free thinker. So he didn't want to follow in Fugaku's steps, so he shifted into his own mission. Now, here's another thing. Itachi was goal-oriented. Every action that he took, it was surrounded by his goals, his mission. Whatever the goal was, if he was doing anything or saw anything or someone was trying to take him off that goal, if there was anything that was not serving his goals or his mission, he did not partake in it, okay? And he was just focused on walking his specific path. Everything that Itachi did was for the sake of the mission. For the sake of the mission. Everything that all the sacrifices that he made, all the actions that he took, every single thought that he had was all for the sake of the mission. And here's the most important thing when it comes to his mission. He was able to sacrifice all emotions for the mission. All emotions. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. Like, here's the thing. Like, people, they even understand what they need to do, but they're still so slave to their emotions. They can't do the thing that they need to get done in order to strive to that next level. But Itachi could. Itachi, he just understood energy. He understood chakra. And because of that, he was able to train himself to control his emotions. And that's what allowed him to make the biggest sacrifices. And speaking of sacrifices, bruh, nobody could sacrifice like the way Itachi could sacrifice. Itachi could sacrifice, and that's the next trait. Bro, man sacrificed every possible thing that could be important to him. Everything. He lost his best friend, right? He lost his, like, he didn't even get to have a 3-man squad like that. You know what I mean? I mean, he did, but he lost like that. He had to sacrifice that. He had to sacrifice his relationship with his most beloved village. The people he cares about the most, right? The village. He had to sacrifice his relationship with that and be branded as an outcast terrorist for the rest of his entire life. He sacrificed his family. The people who were most dear to him, the people that believed in him the most, the people that cared for him the most, he had to take their lives. He killed them. Right? The most beloved person in his life, his baby brother Sasuke. He had to sacrifice his relationship with Sasuke, knowing that Sasuke would grow up the rest of his life completely isolated, completely in depression, completely hating Itachi's guts, right? Itachi, like, it goes on and on and on, the amount of sacrifices that Itachi had, but the most important one and the most crazy one is that he sacrificed his own life. He sacrificed his own life. Itachi could have just went ahead with the plan that the Uchiha had. He could have went ahead with the coup d'etat because they would have won. The Uchiha would have won the coup d'etat, right? They would have took over the village. Itachi could have just went ahead with that. But he understood what mattered most in reality, which is truth and love and peace and harmony. And because he thought about the collective, about the village, about the people, about the civilians, he sacrificed his own life to make it come to fruition. And for that alone, like just that alone, I have so much more respect for Itachi than 99% of all anime characters, okay? But anyways, let's get into the next one. All right, this is a more tactical one. Itachi was a strategic thinker, a very, very strategic thinker, okay? So he was always thinking from future perspectives, okay? He was always placing himself into the future. Before he took an action, he was placing himself in the future and thinking, okay, if I were to take this action, what would take place in the future? What would come as a consequence of me taking these actions? So before he ever did anything major or even smaller things, right? Smaller actions, he would place himself in a future perspective and see what it would be like to look back on that action if he was in the future. Would he succeed? What things would come as consequence? And would those things serve him in the future or not? Okay. He was always thinking 10 steps ahead. He was always planning, right? Most people, they don't really think one step ahead, right? Most people just do everything and like just surface layer. They're not really thinking deep. They're not questioning what could possibly happen for their actions. They're not thinking about what possible things would happen in reaction and in consequence to their actions, right? Itachi did, okay? Itachi was a genius. He was intelligent. And because of that, he was playing chess with motherfuckers. He was playing chess. Itachi thought like chess. He was thinking 10 steps ahead. Not checkers. Not like your boy Kiba, right? He's an individual that be playing checkers and still would be losing every game, right? That's Kiba. Don't be a Kiba. Hashtag be like Sasuke. Hashtag be like Itachi. Itachi was playing chess, right? Now, Itachi took what I call, and we talked about this in the Sasuke Uchiha course, calculated risk. Calculated risk. This means he took risks, right? He was taking major leaps of faith, but before he took the leap of faith, he still planned for it. Okay? I'm about to take a risk, but these are the possible scenarios that could come as a consequence of me taking this giant risk. If those consequences were to happen, how would I position myself so that I would still come out alive if the risk failed, right? So that's what it means to take calculated risk. You still take a leap of faith, but at the end of the day, you're still planning for, okay, what if it doesn't work out, right? You're still planning for failure, okay? Another thing, and we're going to go deep into this, right? Persuasion, manipulation, mastery, okay? Like I said, this course is going to go so freaking deep into so many different layers and avenues of life. One of those things is persuasion and manipulation mastery. We won't get into it now, but in the future, we're going to be talking about Itachi's tactics, strategies, and the things that he used persuasion and manipulation wise to just get what he wanted out of life, right? And we'll also be talking about the 48 Laws of Power. That's going to be a very, very deep book that we're going to talk about in this course, right? We're going to go over a few chapters and yada, yada, yada. And here's an extremely important thing. We're going to talk an entire module about this. Itachi understood how to keep his mouth shut. One of the major things of getting what you want out of life and just strategic thinking and planning and being persuasive and influence is keeping your mouth shut. If you're constantly yapping and yapping and yapping about what you're going to do, you're exposing yourself. Part of being part of getting what you want the most efficient way is to let nobody know what your plans are. That way, you can't get caught up. Like no one, if they wanted to take you off your path, they couldn't do it because they don't even know what your path is. Because that's just personal to you. That's in your own life. That's your own business. So Itachi understood the power of not yapping his mouth 24/7 and constantly just thinking, okay, I need to do this. I need to do that. I'm on this path, but no one needs to know. This is between me, myself, and I, okay? And here's the last trait, the most important trait. Awareness. We are going to be talking about this trait more than any other trait in this course. Awareness. If you know MK Brad, I say it 24/7. Awareness is the, not one of, but the most powerful. It is the most powerful trait any human being could ever possess. Ever. Ever. If you want unlimited, ultimate, infinite power in your life, you need awareness. You need to master it, okay? And we're going to talk deep into that in the rest of the course. So for Itachi, how did Itachi build awareness? Well, he used his eyes. He was able to see through deception. He was able to see other people and read other people. He was able to see. He used his eyes. He used his eyes with maximum efficiency. He didn't look at things surface layer with his eyes. He looked behind the mirror like we talked about, okay? Now, Itachi refused to be a sheep. Everyone else was following the crowd. Everyone else was doing what they saw other people, even if they knew what they were, like you take the Uchiha clan, right? Some of the members obviously knew that what they were doing is wrong. They did not want to go with the rest of the clan's plan of the coup d'etat. They knew there would be, that's an evil thing. They knew there would be slaughter, there'd be blood, there'd be suffering. They didn't want to go ahead with that, but they still followed in those footsteps anyways. Why? Because they were okay with being sheep. Itachi is okay with going against the crowd. He's okay walking a different route because he's a free, independent thinker, which we'll be talking about more in the course. Here's a key thing right here with awareness. You have to ask questions. We talked about this earlier in this module. Asking questions, and not just surface layer questions, deep questions, okay? To build deep awareness, you have to ask questions. And because Itachi was able to ask questions for himself and get the truth, right? He was a truth seeker. Because he was able to get the truth for himself, this allowed him to trust himself. Like we talked about sheep. Sheep just follow the crowd. Why do they follow the crowd? Because they don't trust themselves. Like I said, the Uchiha members, half of them knew what they were doing was wrong, but they still followed the crowd because if they went against the group think, they didn't trust themselves to come out on top in that situation. They didn't trust themselves to be lone wolf, to go on their own path. Itachi did. Because Itachi's a boss. You know what I'm saying? Clairvoyance. Awareness allows you to see what's going on in a situation. Therefore, you can predict what's going to happen in the future. And with a deep awareness, you can predict with high accuracy. And this is what Itachi had. Because he was a truth seeker, because he was asking questions, whenever he was in a situation, he was able to ask questions, peek behind the mirror, like we talked about, and get to the root of why everything was happening and predict. With that information, he was able to predict what would possibly happen in the future, right? With high accuracy. And therefore, he was clairvoyant. He was clairvoyant in the sense that he could predict the future with high accuracy because of how deep his awareness was. We already talked about seeking truth, right? This is key for awareness. You have to seek truth, right? So we won't talk about that. Here's the last thing. He was based in reality. Because Itachi sought the truth so hard, because he got to the roots of everything, because he got to the foundational principles of everything, of reality, he was based in reality. What does this mean? He was living in reality. He was living in reality. He was not living in society, right? Most people live in society, meaning they follow the crowd, they follow what other people say, right? Whenever the government says something, they just follow that as if it's truth. They don't think for themselves. They're not free thinkers. They're sheep. Itachi was the opposite of that. He was based in reality. If someone said something, even if all the sheep agreed with it, if Itachi broke it down with his awareness and questioned it and said, that's actually wrong, then he wasn't going to follow it. He only lived in reality, not in society. And once again, we'll be talking about that more in the course, okay? That was the last trait. Now, here's the last thing I want to say. There is one thing that Itachi didn't have, right? And I have a grudge with this with Itachi, you know? And I would love to talk to Itachi about this in the show. If he was a real person, I would talk to him about this. The one thing that Itachi did, he had everything. He had everything. He was the most well-rounded anime character of all time. But there was one thing he didn't have. What is it, MK Brad? It is this. Itachi wasn't willing to say fuck the establishment. He wasn't willing to fight the government. He wasn't willing to fight the elites. Itachi knew what his clan was doing was wrong. And he knew what the government was doing was wrong. Now, he felt that obviously the best decision he could do was place the village first, which was the best decision. Place the civilians first. They matter the most. They're innocent, right? And he did that. He felt the best route to take was to slaughter the Uchiha clan. I personally feel he could have taken a better path. There could have been a better solution. But because Shisui wasn't there, it was much harder. And it was too shocking for him as well that Shisui sacrificed his life. Wouldn't be there for him, right? And there's a lot of pressure. So he sacrificed his clan. But what Itachi didn't do was fight those in the Hidden Leaf government who were making bad decisions. He knew. I mean, he had a deep respect for the third Hokage, but the village elders, and especially someone like Danzo, he didn't fight against them. He knew what they were doing was wrong. He knew what they were planning was for their own benefit and gain, but he didn't say fuck the establishment and try to wipe out not only his clan, but wipe out those in power who are doing the wrong thing, right? So that's the only grudge I have with Itachi, but at the end of the day, he still made a fairly good decision. He made the best decision that he could have given the circumstances in the situation in his mentality, okay? So, but yeah, that is the one thing that Itachi didn't have was he didn't have fuck the establishment. He was still somewhat, on some level, a pawn of the government, okay? But nonetheless, those are the 8 main traits of Itachi. We'll be breaking all those down. We'll be getting deep into this. And yeah, once again, that's probably this is one of the only PowerPoint. We might do another PowerPoint, but I fucking hate PowerPoints. I want to do video breakdowns. I want to do in-depth film study. That's what we're going to be doing. But anyways, I hope you guys like this video. I'll see you guys in the next module. I hope you guys write down these traits and study them as we go through the course. Study them because it's all about applying it into our own lives. This is MK Brown. I'll see you guys in the rest of the course. Peace.